Thanks for coming to hear me speak today. So, I'm Daniela Lawler. I'm a qualified naturopathic nutritional therapist, and I'm also the founder of Purely Health Clinic, which is a natural clinic based in Solihull. I'm also a mother of two. I've got my little one here on the front row, Vega. Hello. She's just doing some colouring in, so let's hope she's quiet. Hence my interest in children's nutrition, because that's always been of paramount importance for me and my children. I'm also going to warn you that I am going to be debunking probably some mainstream advice that you have previously heard. Now, I don't want you to just take my word for it. I've got a sign-up sheet up here if you want my references, and I'm quite glad to share them with you. So just provide me with your email address, tick for the references, and you can also tick if you want some recipes for your children, and you can also sign up to my newsletter. Now, let's just get started. So, today, these are the topics I'm going to be focusing on. So, what are children eating in the UK? Sugar, bone health, vitamin D and sunscreen, salt, the food pyramid, fats, cereals and other common children's foods, and suggestions of how to get your kids to eat better. Now, whilst I was doing my research for today, I came across this image that I thought was really powerful. So if you give this to your plants, water, then why do you think it's okay to give your children foods like this? Now, I'm hoping none of you do that here today because you're all really into your health. You wouldn't dream of that. But it's just some food for thought. Now, this quote was taken from a book by Dr. Sarah Myhill, and she's a real pioneer in the industry, not just in the health industry, but also for the medical industry. She's a qualified GP, so she comes from that side of the fence, but she also sees how important nutrition and lifestyle is in combating chronic disease. Now, I'll just read this quote to you. Many of the causes of premature death have been successfully addressed by civilization. These include famine, the cold, infectious disease, accidents, and war. We now have a new weapon of mass destruction, and that weapon is contained within our supermarkets. Modern diets high in addictive sugars and carbohydrates are now driving our modern epidemics of premature death. Now, looking at the statistics in the UK, 1 in 5 children in reception is actually obese, and 1 in 3 children by year 6 is overweight or obese. Now, I find those statistics really shocking, and what is our future holding for our children? So why is this happening? Now, I analysed the National Diet and Nutritional Survey. Now, this was funded by Public Health UK and the UK's Food Standards Agency, and they assessed the diet and nutrient intake and statistics of the general population. This was from age groups 1.5 years and upwards, and they took a random sample of 21,573 households from 799 postcode sectors. They analysed dietary habits as well as socio-demographic status. They also took into consideration lifestyle, and physical activity was also questioned. Now, to find out nutritional status of the children, they did blood sampling, and they also did urine sampling to find out salt levels. Now, this is the outcome of that survey. Our kids are only eating 3 portions of fruit and veg a day. Now, bear in mind, the government guidelines are 5. 5 is just to avoid deficiency. It's not for vitality. Now, naturopathically, we advise our clients to hit 10, if not more. So our kids are seriously deficient, and they're missing out on all those protective antioxidants that you get in fruit and vegetables. Mineral intakes were also below the recommended daily intake, and some were even below the lower recommended range. Now, just to make you aware what that means, we have RNI, which is recommended nutrient intake. Now again, This is just the bare minimum to avoid deficiency, and our children are not even hitting this, and some of them weren't even hitting the lower recommended ranges. And the minerals that came out low on the blood sampling were iron, iodine. Now, iodine, 80% of iodine is utilised by the thyroid gland, but it's also very important for brain function, and it's especially important for pregnant women. Now, it has been discovered that pregnant women who are deficient in iodine run the risk of their children being born with cretinism. Calcium was low, but I'm going to go into that a bit more deeply a bit further on. Zinc. Zinc is very important for the immune system. It's involved in over 500 enzyme processes in the body, and it's really important for skin health. So children that have eczema, or you might have a teenager with acne, maybe they are deficient in zinc. Now, you can find out if you're deficient in zinc by looking at your nail beds. So those little white marks that you might find on your nail beds, that suggests zinc deficiency. And also, if you have a wound that takes a long time to heal, that can also suggest zinc deficiency. Potassium, magnesium, and selenium. Selenium is another very important antioxidant, but again, it's really essential for thyroid function. We're seeing a growth in thyroid dysfunctions and underactive thyroid diseases. We have iodine, selenium, both low on this list. Could this be contributing to this epidemic that we're seeing? Vitamin D deficiency was as high as 40% of the population, which is huge. And I'm going to tell you what the implications of that means. Iron intake for our teenage girls was below 90% of the RNI. So our teenage girls are deficient in iron when they need iron, probably most importantly at this time, because this is when they're going through menstruation. Now, just so you know where iron is from, the best source of iron is from organ meats, so from things like liver. And that seems to be kind of a forgotten food to eat now, but it's something you should remember as a powerhouse of nutrients. Now, I know a lot of people don't like the flavour of liver, but try making a pate. That's how I get my children to eat liver. Other sources of iron are red meat, and for vegetarians, you can get them from a non-heme source, which means from a vegetarian source, from things like leafy greens. But iron is harder to absorb this way. It needs vitamin C. So I suggest adding some lemon juice to your green leafy vegetables to absorb the iron from there. Now, another tip when it comes to eating your vegetables, fat-soluble vitamins that you find in vegetables cannot be absorbed without fat. So add things like olive oil or butter to your vegetables to absorb those fat-soluble vitamins. Now, no surprise here, our kids just love sugar. 14 to 16% of daily calories were coming from the following foods: breakfast cereals and yogurts, fizzy drinks and juice drinks, sweets, chocolate, ice cream, buns, cakes, pastries and biscuits. Now, not on this list is carbohydrates, like your breads and pastas, which we need to remember is essentially broken down to glucose. So that is adding more sugar into the mix. 30% of this value came from soft drinks and fruit juices, which can be completely avoided in the diet. Children don't need to be drinking things like this. Now, one thing everybody is always really focused on when it comes to children is bone health. So what do we need for good bone health? So everyone's familiar with calcium. Vitamin D is very paramount. Magnesium. There's other nutrients that are also involved. I'm not going to go into all those today because I don't have the time. And exercise. I'm not sure if you're aware how important exercise is for bone health, but putting stress on the bones induces what we call osteoblasts, which is the scientific word for the building of bones. But it's not any kind of exercise. So, for an example, if you went swimming, this is not putting stress on the bones. You need to have some impact on the bones or putting some weight onto the bones. So some kind of running, jumping action, putting some ankle weights on or using some weights. This is all going to induce this osteoblast, the building of bones. Now, in the survey that was conducted, calcium, vitamin D and magnesium were all low in this study, so our children are not getting the nutrients they need for bone health. Now, everybody is always so obsessed with calcium when it comes to bone health, but is it really all it's cracked up to be, or is it really as important as we're told it is? According to statistics in the UK, we have the highest rates of osteoporosis worldwide behind the US. But how much milk do our children drink? A lot. We're obsessed with our children drinking milk, so why is this statistic there? So what about supplementation? Should you be supplementing with calcium? A 2010 meta-analysis showed that calcium supplements without a co-administered vitamin D is associated with an increased risk of heart attack. So basically, too much calcium from supplements can calcify the arteries and cause kidney stones. And according to the National Osteoporosis Foundation, food is the best source of calcium. So back to milk. Milk's really good for you, isn't it? Yeah? We should be getting all our kids to drink milk at school. We're obsessed with them drinking milk. Well, it's a myth promoted by the dairy industry that consuming pasteurised dairy such as milk and cheese increases calcium levels. It's all down to the pasteurisation process. The pasteurisation process creates calcium carbonate. This is the same calcium carbonate you find in supplements, and this has absolutely no way of entering our cells without a chelating agent. And a chelating agent is something that makes it more absorbable. Now, because of this, the body pulls calcium from the bones and the tissues to buffer this calcium carbonate in the blood. So basically, in essence, this process actually contributes to osteoporosis. So where is calcium found? Calcium is found in green leafy vegetables, almonds, broccoli, sesame seeds and tahini. Tahini is sesame paste, and fish bones. Now, I'm not asking you to go and get your children to start eating fish bones and pose a choking hazard, but if you get things like tins of sardines, they've got like the soft bones in there, and you can eat small bony fish like anchovies. Now, have you ever heard of magnesium for bone health? It's not something that is as widely known, but actually it's probably more important for your bones than calcium is. So the intake of magnesium during childhood is a key predictor of bone density and bone mineral content, not calcium. Greater consumption of magnesium intake is associated with high bone density among men and women. Now, all this data was taken from the Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. For every 100 micrograms of magnesium taken daily, it's directly associated to a 2% increase in whole body bone density. Now, we're constantly bombarded with the fact that children need calcium for their bones, and this data from the Baylor College suggests that soon will be the case that we'll be urged to feed our children magnesium. Historically, humans would have actually consumed magnesium at a ratio of 1:1. We now consume 10 times more calcium than we do magnesium. So the balance is all out. So where can you find magnesium? Green leafy vegetables. That's where you find calcium as well. Cacao. Cacao is raw chocolate. I'm sure your children will love having some cacao. You can add that to smoothies. Seeds. These are also a great source of calcium. Nuts. Also a great source of calcium. So what I'm showing you here is in nature you will find foods that have that perfect ratio of magnesium to calcium of 1:1. Now, you don't have to just get magnesium from food, you can have magnesium baths. So you might have seen things like magnesium flakes or Epsom salts. You can put a cup of these in the bath for your children, and they just have to be in the bath for about 20 minutes, and they'll absorb the magnesium transdermally through the skin. Or you can buy transdermal sprays. There's a brand called Better You. and you just spray it onto the skin and rub it in. It is quite tingly, so if you're buying it for your children, I'd recommend you buy the sensitive one. So, on to vitamin D. What's vitamin D essential for? Well, it's essential for calcium metabolism, and I'll go into that on the next slide. Bone health, mental health, so seasonal affective disorder, SAD, is associated with vitamin D deficiency. Blood sugar regulation, the immune system. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what I mean by the immune system. Now, we have two prongs to the immune system. We have the Th1 and the Th2. And one is your first line of defence, and the other side is your memory side of your immune system. And you want these to be working together and communicating to each other in harmony. You don't want to be overreacting. And vitamin D is essential in modulating the immune system so not one side is overreacting. Allergies are associated with a Th2 dominant immune system. I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by this. My 2-year-old daughter, she suffers with allergies to tomatoes and salmon, and she also can react to something that I don't know because she'll just react out of nowhere after she's not eaten anything. And what I mean by reaction, her lips will blow up and she'll get red blotches on her face. So I decided to take her to an allergy specialist at the private hospital. And what he wanted to do was do a venous blood draw and take a sample of her blood to find out what she was actually allergic to. I questioned him about the vitamin D and its modulating effects on the immune system, and could she be vitamin D deficient? He said he didn't know about this and dismissed it. So I went away, this was in June, and we were about to go on holiday. So I didn't want to put her through the trauma of having a blood test. So I thought, we were going to Spain for 2 months for the summer. I wanted to see if the vitamin D she would be getting from the sun made a difference to her reactions. So while we're on holiday, I didn't plaster her in sunscreen because she's got dark skin. She can tolerate the sun for long periods of time. So she was in the sun for 3-4 hours with no sunscreen, and she doesn't burn, so it's perfectly safe for her. And I tried her again with tomatoes, and I tried her again with salmon, and she had absolutely no reaction. So I can only assume that she was deficient in vitamin D. Vitamin D is also essential for immune system disorders like autoimmunity. I've had clients before with autoimmunity to their thyroid, and I've tested their vitamin D and it's on the floor. So it helps, and if you're not sure what an autoimmune disease is, this is when your immune system starts to attack your own bodily tissues. And I've also had cancer patients, again, test very low for vitamin D. And vitamin D is also essential for cancer prevention. Now, I'm going to read you this quote, and then I'll explain what I mean further. So, for bone health, calcium doesn't matter. If you have high vitamin D status, you can absorb even trivial amounts of calcium. If you have low vitamin D, you can't absorb any. So what that is saying, if you're deficient in vitamin D, you can't even absorb any calcium from your food. But if you've got good levels of vitamin D, you can absorb trivial amounts of calcium. So where does vitamin D come from? Well, the best source is the sun. But to produce vitamin D, you need cholesterol. So we're being advised to not go in the sun or to block the sun and to not eat fat. So basically, we're just preventing ourselves from being able to produce vitamin D. Now, other sources of vitamin D, you can get them from food, but it's not the best way of absorbing it. Animal foods are the best source of vitamin D in the food source because they contain an active form of vitamin D, which is vitamin D3. If you want to get vitamin D from a vegetarian source, it's vitamin D2, which is the inactive form, which is harder to produce the active form of vitamin D from that. Now, seafood, oysters are a good source. Fats are a great source of vitamin D, so things like lard, yes, lard, butter, cod liver oil, egg yolks, oily fish. And organ meats, again, liver is on that list again. So fat is not the demon, and I'm going to explain about that again in my next slides. So just more on the sun. So did you know that sunscreen of SPF 8 blocks vitamin D production by 95%? Higher than this, production is virtually zero. So I'm not asking you to just put your child outside and let them burn. It's about finding their tolerance. So start off at 10 minutes with no sunscreen, and then put the sunscreen on, and then build it up slowly. But also, depending what time of the day you go out as well. My eldest daughter, she has got really fair skin and burns very, very easily, so I've got to be really careful with her. And we've just spent 2 months in Spain. But she was absolutely fine. If I let her outside at 9 o'clock in the morning, she would be outside from 9 to 11 with no sunscreen. Then I would put some sunscreen on her, and then I would cover her in a caftan from say 12 till 3, and then from 3 till 5 I left her again with no sunscreen. And she didn't burn. She was absolutely fine. It's also important to remember that the darker your skin, the harder it is to produce vitamin D. And use natural sunscreens. And remember, the sun makes you happy. So what's wrong with sunscreens? Well, they contain endocrine disruptors. And what that means is they disrupt your hormone levels. They make the body have higher circulating levels of estrogen. Now, higher levels of circulating estrogen are connected to things like estrogen-driven cancers. So things like ovarian cancers, breast cancers, prostate cancers are all associated to excess estrogen. Early onset puberty in girls, again, is associated with high circulating estrogen. Endometriosis, fibroids, it's all excess estrogen in the body. Now, sunscreen doesn't just cause excess estrogen. It's all these toxins in our environment. So whatever you put on your skin, whatever you use in your home that's not natural, it's going to be an endocrine disruptor. The most common sunscreen chemical is oxybenzone, which contributes to a reduction in sperm count. Evidence also suggests that sunscreens increase your risk of cancer. And there's also increasing evidence that sunshine is not a risk factor for aggressive melanoma. So basically, the sun does not cause aggressive skin cancers. It can cause benign growths, yes, but not aggressive skin cancer. Sunscreen does. And then, like I said, this is all referenced, and you're very welcome to take these references away and do some digging for yourself. Now, this is not, going back to the sunscreen, I know the statistic from somewhere, but I haven't got this referenced. I think it's the UK and Australia have some of the highest skin cancer rates worldwide, yet we have the highest usage of sunscreen. Now, I recommend using natural sunscreen. Brands I recommend are Neal's Yard, Shade and Badger. My favourite is Shade because it's only got 4 ingredients in there. It's got coconut oil, beeswax, zinc oxide and shea butter. It's only factor 25, but it works absolutely fine. Again, it's just a marketing thing about factor 50 is any different. My eldest daughter, who burns in the sun, I used this all summer on her and she was absolutely fine. You just got to use it more frequently and put it on quite thick. Now, on to salt. Salt was listed as something that was high among the consumption of our children. But is all salt bad for us? No, it's not. It's essential to life and it's critical for our metabolism. Now, what has been found is that reducing salt intake is actually linked to the following: diabetes, metabolic syndrome, an increased risk of cardiovascular death, cognition loss in neonates, that's mental loss in babies and adults, unsteadiness, falls and fractures. Now we have a basic human requirement of 1.5 teaspoons of salt per day. Now there was a study conducted by the Harvard Medical School which demonstrated that when healthy people were put on a low sodium diet, they developed insulin resistance within 7 days. Insulin resistance is actually the precursor to diabetes. But it's all about getting that right balance. So it's not about having too much salt, and it's not about having no salt. It's about having enough salt. Now, there was a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, and they've discovered in their trials that individuals that consumed less than 1.5 teaspoons of sodium was associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular events. But on the flip side, those individuals that had more than 3 teaspoons of sodium, this was associated with an increased risk of death by cardiovascular incidents. So the ideal amount is 1.5 teaspoons per day. So it's just about getting the balance. It's not about avoiding salt, it's about getting that balance with salt. Now, I'm not going to tell you to start getting the Saxo table salt because that's man-made and it contains additives like anti-caking agents and sodium ferrocyanide. Now, I do recommend you get things like pink salt and grey salt. Pink salt contains over 80 trace minerals, and the grey salt also contains lots of minerals required by the body. There's quite a big price difference between these two. The grey salt is a lot cheaper because it's from a lot closer to home. It's from France, and the pink salt is from the Himalayas in Pakistan. You get minerals in these like boron, copper, iodine, manganese, molybdenum, selenium, zinc, calcium, chloride, iron, magnesium. The list goes on. So it's a very beneficial salt to get. I've been using salt with my children since the day I started weaning them. Now you can buy these salts from Ocado and other major supermarkets. So what do kids love to eat for breakfast? The majority of children, I think, are still eating cereals. Now, I like to dub cereal as a crap food. And I say crap because it contains lots of chemicals. It removes the body's nutrients. And what I mean by that, it contains no nutrients, so it uses nutrients from the body to be broken down. They're highly addictive because they use the same pathways as sugar. And they're highly processed. Now, cereal goes through a really high heat process called extrusion. And this process denatures proteins, turning them into neurotoxins. And neurotoxins are damaging to the brain. Whole grain cereals are actually worse because they contain more protein. The high heat damages fatty acids, destroying vitamins and minerals. What manufacturers do, they synthetically add vitamins and minerals back in so they can say the product has been fortified. But because it's synthetic, the body can't actually use it. And they contain 500 times the safe limit of the class A toxin acrylamides, which have been proven in studies to cause cancer in animals and humans. Now, I'm going to talk about fruit shoots because it's a real pet hate of mine, because I always see children drinking fruit shoots and they're always in places that are supposed to be healthy, like the gym. So I'm going to look at the ingredients on fruit shoots. So they look quite clean, and there's no E numbers, is there? And when you look at the nutritional value, it's very low in calories, there's not really any carbohydrates. On the front of the package it says low sugar, but what it means when it has low sugar, it has sweeteners in instead. But sweeteners are a chemical, and they still go through the same pathway in the body as it would do if you had sugar. So I'll explain the process of sweeteners. So when you have a sweetener, it hits those taste receptors on the tongue, sends a message to the brain that you've had sugar. So the sugar the brain preps the pancreas to release insulin. So the blood sugar rises, the insulin is poured out, the blood sugar crashes, and then the adrenals start to release our stress hormone, cortisol. So as you see, this whole process is very stressful on the body. But then, at the end of this stressful process, the cells haven't even been given any energy. So you're better off to have, if you're going to have sugar. Sweeteners aren't even linked to weight loss, they're actually linked to people gaining weight from them. So it's just having chemicals in the body that are associated to cancer as well. Now, back to the ingredients list. Looks like there's no E numbers. But when I put these into an additive checker, there's actually 5 E numbers in fruit shoots. And these are linked to asthma, can cause liver damage, can cause behavioural problems, should be avoided by asthmatics, can cause potential stomach cramps. Now, when I looked into this further on the Food Standards Agency, they say that the manufacturers have to list the E numbers, but not by the actual E number. As long as they put the chemical name on there, that's fine. So, for a parent picking up that packaging, they think, oh, it's got no E numbers, I'll buy that for my child. So, it's just a little loophole that the manufacturers are able to have, that they can hide the complete truth from us. So if you are concerned about E numbers, you can actually buy an app, that's $1.99, and it's called E numbers, and you can check the E numbers either by the E or by the chemical name. So sugar. Sugar is a food addiction. And I'm not just talking about chocolates and sweets and cakes, I'm talking about all carbohydrate food, like breads, pastas, rice, etc. They all essentially break down to glucose. Now, a study on mice found that they had similar effects on the brain to drug abuse. So the mice were found to go through all the 3 phases of addiction: binge, withdrawal, and craving. In the withdrawal phase, the mice experienced acute anxiety, teeth chattering, tremors, and head shakes. And we might see this withdrawal phase happen in our children when they get that blood sugar crash and they get angry, they start tantruming, they start crying. And in an adult, this is probably the time when you'll go and just reach for that sugary carbohydrate food to get that blood sugar back up. And then you're on that roller coaster. Intermittent use of sugar has similar effects on the brain to psychostimulants and opiate use. And it's also important to remember that sugar disables the immune system for up to 5 hours. And it's been proven that white blood cells are only able to consume half the amount of bacteria under the influence of sugar. So when your children are ill, avoid sugar. Should avoid sugar as much as possible, but if you can't, definitely when they're ill. So, high sugar and carb consumption is the road to diabetes. Now, primitive man would have not had access to the amount of carbohydrates and sugar that we have today. Now, when you have carbohydrates and sugar, it causes this spike in blood sugar in your bloodstream. So you need insulin to buffer this rise in blood sugar. Now, insulin should not be used at every meal. Primitively, it would only ever been used in the autumn harvest when we had access to berries and nuts and roots at that time of year. Insulin is used to stabilise blood sugar at every single meal. Now, this is inefficient and it costs the body a lot of energy metabolically. So basically, exhausting insulin the way we do every single day causes diabetes. And we're seeing an epidemic of diabetes. Now, it was recently reported that a 3-year-old child had type 2 adult onset diabetes. Now, where has this gone wrong? I firstly would look at the food pyramid. This food pyramid was introduced over 20 years ago and it's still circulating now. So this is our government recommendations of what we should be eating. Now, the base of the food pyramid is carbohydrates. So they're telling us that the majority of our food should be coming from carbohydrates. So we should be using insulin every single meal, because that's not going to cause us diabetes, is it? And then at the top of the pyramid, we've got fats in the same bracket as cakes and sweets. Now, fats do not cause heart disease. Sugar and inflammation causes heart disease, not fat. Fat is essential to life. Now, this is more of an ideal food pyramid. We should be consuming water, but the majority of our plate should be coming from vegetables. Our carbohydrate source should be coming from vegetables, and our fibre should be coming from vegetables. Now, this will give us all the phytonutrients, all the antioxidants, and also all the good fibre that our beneficial bacteria in our gut needs. And that will also help for a strong immune system. We should be eating good quality organic grass-fed meats and wild fish. And if you're a vegetarian, lots of legumes and beans, not processed corn products. Healthy fats. And then at the top, fruits as your source of sugar, but minimally. 2 pieces maximum a day, because it will use insulin. Now, I came across this quote from Professor John Yudkin. He was born in 1910, and he was the founding professor of the Department of Nutrition at Queen Elizabeth College. And this is what he said back then. Fat is the most valuable food known to man. Yet somewhere along the way, this message has been lost, and we've been demonised. Fat has been demonised, and we've been led into probably the biggest health scandal of our time to believe that fat is the demon. Kids need fat. Cholesterol is the main nutrient for the brain. It's essential for our cell membrane communication. Now, all chronic disease stems from cellular membrane dysfunction. And what I mean by that is your cell membrane is made of fat. It's made of a phospholipid bilayer. Now, if you're not getting these essential fats in your diet, like your omega-3, your cell membranes aren't going to be well formed. So they're not going to be able to communicate well with each other. And then this is what causes dysfunction at a cellular level in the body that contributes to chronic disease. Cholesterol is the precursor to all hormone production, so we need it for healthy hormones. Babies need fat for brain development. Now, as a baby, you're born with 2,500 synapses per neuron. And by the age of 3, you have 15,000 synapses per neuron. Now, to put that into context, that's twice the amount of an adult. So babies are going through lots of rapid brain development, and for this process, they need fat. And yes, I'm talking about animal fats, like lard, beef dripping, goose fat, butter, egg yolks. These are all the best sources. But it's all about quality. You need to be buying fats from animals that graze on the land. The land has been touched by the sun. So they're rich in the vitamin D, those fat-soluble vitamins. I do not recommend eating fat from animals that have been enclosed indoors. Now, the government recommend low fat from age of 5, and I just think this is so detrimental to health. All this growth they're going through, hormones as a teenager, we need fat to support all these processes in the body. Mother's milk is mainly cholesterol. Nature wouldn't have got it that wrong. But again, it's about knowing your fats. It's about knowing which ones to have. Now, the best fats are your saturates, your unsaturates, and your polyunsaturates. These are good for your health. They're naturally occurring. They decrease LDL. LDL is your low-density lipoprotein, also known as your bad cholesterol. It decreases your bad cholesterol. And it increases your HDL, your good cholesterol, your high-density lipoprotein. It decreases your risk of heart disease. It helps to control your blood sugar. And it increases satiety. It makes you feel full. Now, your trans fats are the ones you need to avoid. Those are the ones that you'll get in your cakes and your biscuits and your processed foods. They increase your LDL, they increase your bad cholesterol, they decrease your good cholesterol. And margarine is also a trans fat, and they increase your risk of heart disease. Now, good sources of fat are nuts, seeds, oily fish, think smash, sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, herring. These are your smaller, less toxic fish that are high in omega-3. Olive oil, flax oil, coconut oil, butter, ghee, lard, beef dripping, goose fat, avocados and eggs. Now, all fats need to be treated differently. So the ones that are solid at room temperature, like your beef dripping and your lard, these are the ones to cook with. They have a high smoking point, so they can be heated to a high temperature without being damaged. And the ones that you should dress salads with are things like olive oil and flax oil. These are liquid at room temperature. They're very delicate and they're sensitive to light and they're sensitive to the air. So keep them in a dark cupboard, airtight. Now, how to get kids to enjoy healthy food? Involve them in the process. Let them choose their own vegetables. My daughter, she will pick her vegetables from the fridge and she helps me prepare them. She will peel the Brussels sprouts, so she'll put them in a steamer. Have a veg chart. They get a gold star every time they try a new vegetable. Get them a cookbook. Let them choose a meal and eat as a family. Now, what should our kids be eating? Organ meat, powerhouse of nutrients. They only need a small amount a week because it's so powerful. If they don't like it, try pâtés. Grass-reared organic meats and poultry. An abundance of organic vegetables, at least 10 portions a day with 2 coming from fruit, and aim for a high diversity. So aim for lots of different varieties, don't just stick to your peas and carrots. This is very important for your gut microbes. Lots of fat like butter, avocados, animal fats, olive oil, coconut oil. Organic pastured eggs, legumes, beans, just avoid processed food, and minimally naturally gluten-free grains like rice, quinoa, buckwheat. But again, remember, they use insulin, so minimally. Breakfast ideas, omelettes with assorted vegetables, wild smoked salmon with scrambled eggs, smoothies using only one piece of fruit, get some fats in there like avocado, coconut oil, nuts, seeds, juices, but just being made with vegetables. Homemade grain-free granolas made with nuts, seeds, coconut oil, raw honey, served with yogurt and nut milk. Get good quality sausages made with 100% meat and no additives. I've got a fantastic organic butcher that will make me 100% pork sausages, which just have pork, salt and pepper, and they're pastured organic. My kids love those for breakfast. I'll make protein pancakes with coconut flour, hemp protein, eggs, drizzle them in butter, serve them with nitrate-free bacon. Recommendations, I love this cookbook for children, it's called Eat Like a Dinosaur. Rude Health nut milks, they are the best nut milks on the market because they don't contain any additives. Primal bars are a great snack bar to look out for, very clean. Coconut yogurts, there's lots on the market now. Whole natural yogurts, and don't buy them already with fruit in, just add your own fruit, nuts and seeds because you'll get hit with sugar in those. And raw vegetable sticks for snacks with hummus. And eat like a family. Studies show happier children with families that eat together. They share stories of the day. You can be more mindful of what you're eating. No devices, time to be a unit, get your body in that rest and digest mode. And just to finish off, I had to share this quote with you. It's from Dr. Sherry Rogers. She's a real pioneer in the medical industry, a real whistleblower on the industry, and she says the cure is in the kitchen. Thank you.